Let's be honest, there's no guidebook when it comes to relationships. So we end up having to stumble through life trying to figure things out for ourselves. What if there was a podcast that found the answers for you, that provided insight to build a successful relationship and ultimately find the companionship you've always hoped for? Welcome to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we answer the questions most people are afraid to ask when it comes to lessons in life and love. It's time to master this thing called life together with your hosts, John and Ashley.
And welcome back to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we are your guide to dating, love, life, relationships, and everything else that life can possibly throw at you. And today we have a special guest with us. His name is Anwar White, and he is a dating coach for smart and successful women. Yes, there's more than one dating coach out there, and this is where you're going to get your options as to who works best for your specific situation. Anwar is a dating coach for smart and successful women, and he can be found at Get Your Guide Coaching Podcast, or you go out and you can find him on getyourguidecoaching.com. If you find us, you can find him. Yes. What we're looking at doing today is we're going to take some of the most common questions that we have seen around the internet and some of those that have been sent in to us about getting back into dating after this whole pandemic thing has happened. But first, let's get some background on Anwar, because you're already familiar with us. Let's get you familiar with Anwar. So Anwar, give us a little bit of your background and who you work with and kind of your methodology.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I am really happy to chat with you all today. I have really been doing this for all of my life, even in elementary school. I was the person on the playground that was helping the boys talk to the girls and the girls talk to the boys. I could play basketball with the boys and, jump double dutch with the girls. So I've always been able to navigate both genders and have both female and male perspectives that I think really helps me when I do the work that I do with my clients. It wasn't until I actually got my MBA that I found that there was something special about smart and successful women that was making it hard for them to find the love that they want, need, and deserve, right? I would touch base with a lot of my female classmates, and what would happen is, their life was amazing. They had the car, the house, amazing vacations, the brunch with the girls. But there was something about their love life that just wasn't clicking. And so that's when the type A person and personality came out. And I was like, I'm just going to take this over for you. And we're going to get this solved for you. And that's what I did for 3 of my girlfriends. And, before long, they were getting into awesome relationships with great high quality guys. And within a year or two, they were getting engaged and married. And so I was like, I love this. I'm really good at this. I'm going to do this full time. So I got certified, and I've been doing this for the last decade. And so it's been a lot of fun. Now, you asked me about methodology. I think about the work that I do both internally and externally, right? So the external stuff is about how they're communicating, how they're perceiving, interacting with the guys that they're dating, interacting with, talking to, and making sure that they fully understand and are super clear with what they want, what they need, and how to best communicate that so that it could be heard and digested.
Right.
In parallel, I'm also working with the women internally, right? About mindset, about confidence, about, being able to set certain boundaries and having the confidence to do so. Because what I do know is that the women that I work with, they could literally get into a relationship tomorrow just by lowering their standards. But that's not necessarily the work that we're focused on, right? I want to make sure that my clients are getting into their forever relationship, right? And so that means that they have to become the woman or women that can not just get into one, but also maintain, sustain an amazing, healthy, long-term relationship.
Right.
Nice.
That sounds very close to what we do, because we do the internal and the external as well.
Yeah. It's important.
One of the very first things that we ask somebody is, who are you? And we don't accept the answer of, well, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer, I'm a cashier, I'm this, I'm that. No, who are you? describe for me who you are, not what you do. And that sometimes throws people for a loop, but when they do that, it gives them more of this, what I bring to the relationship. This is what makes me unique from everybody else.
It's basically what we do. I mean, and I think the way you challenge women, you take on women who are smart, successful, and you're saying, listen, you already got it, but who are you? And kind of doing that hard work with them. Where do you think that fear comes from them?
Yeah. So, everyone is in a different place in their journey, right? In their love journey. And so I have some clients that they've never dated, right? They've leaned into school and gotten straight A's all of their life and then leaned into work and just ignored this part of their life. I have other clients that have tried and start and stop, but never really put themselves fully out there because they were scared about being vulnerable, right? I have other clients that have been trying since junior high and haven't had luck. I have other clients that have had some really traumatic experiences as it relates to romantic relationships or even family relationships. So, everyone's been in a different place in their love journey. And it's one of the reasons why I work one-on-one with my clients is to make sure that I'm meeting them where they are instead of having a group program and just talking foundationally about what they should or shouldn't do.
We had an episode a little while back where we ripped on some of the dating gurus. Some of them are charging $83,000 for this great big huge group thing. And when you listen to what they're saying, it's a lot of pump you up, make you feel good while you're at this vacation resort. But then you go back home to Timbuktu, Minnesota, and you're like, this is going to work for me. But what is taught in the seminar doesn't work in Montauk, Maine. So we do the same thing. We work a lot with people one-on-one.
And if there is a group involved, we always want to make sure that the group is sort of similar. So if, like you said, you have so many clients that they've never dated before, grouping them together is easier than just saying, oh, you've never dated, you have low self-esteem, you have too high self-esteem, your husband is still in the picture. Rather than, if you do have to group, I would say you group people like.
Yeah. Like sometimes what I'll do is, like once a month, I'll group my current students and my alumni, right? Because I do think that there is something to be said for being able to coach people at different parts of the journey. So if you're early on in your journey, you get to hear like how to think about, let's say, having a conversation about moving in. So that when you get there, you have the foundational knowledge about how to do it, what to do, and it might accelerate you to get to your love results and, accomplish your love goals, right? So I do think that there's something to be said for that. But to your point, I don't think it's something that should regularly happen because it could be a disconnect for so many people.
Yeah, we try and group everybody that's kind of similar in their journey. That way, you're not talking to one section of the group while alienating the other part.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So let's jump into some of these questions that we've seen rather routinely. One of them deals with dating apps. We don't work too well with dating apps. We're
anti-dating app. Just put it out there.
And I am so pro dating apps, so this will be fun.
Well, what we did was we looked at a lot of different dating apps and what they are doing. And so we have like this mini series happening right now on dating apps. Now, we're not saying if you use dating apps, don't talk to us. You do you. Use what works for you. So one of the questions that we get is, what is the biggest mistake someone can make on a dating app? As far as what you see in with your current clients or with your clients.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes, and I think that this kind of lends itself to how you all think about it, is that it can be the be-all, end-all, right? It's just one medium, right? There are so many ways to meet someone and to focus on your life that I do think that sometimes people get obsessed with them and don't realize that it's just one tool, right? Like I think of dating apps as like one way to exercise at a gym, right?
Okay.
There are so many different ways to work your muscles, your love muscles, your dating muscles. And to focus on one part of your body or one exercise, it's going to give you a lopsided body. Nobody wants that. That's not hot and sexy.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's one thing that I see a lot. And then secondarily, I would say that people will be on them all day, every day, right? There's no balance or boundaries around them. So one of the things that I do with my clients is make sure that they have very strict instructions in terms of how much time I want them to be on them. Because
Right.
if not, my clients are smart and successful. So they're used to seeing a goal and going hard until they actually accomplish it.
Very type
So,
A, yeah. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
yeah. So I have to be no, get off of this app. You have the rest of your life to live. This is just a small part of your life. And that's how we should be kind of approaching it. Because when you're on the apps a lot, there's a sort of desperation that comes forth, right?
Uh-huh.
And whether you understand that energy or not, people can perceive it and receive it, right? And so this is just something that we check into, see who's there, and then we check back out and we live our lives, right?
Yeah. If I have a client that likes using the apps, we have no problem with that. Go ahead and use the app, but don't become addicted to it. And don't
Right.
sit there and go, okay, well, this person, their profile, they don't like traveling. So swipe, see what's next. I tend to see those that are addicted to them or spend too much time with them tend to see the grass is greener on the other side, but I have to reject this person and go to the next. So there's that abundance mentality is
Right.
how I would put it.
And then the whole way the app's built. I mean, it's the social media thing that we kind of have another pet peeve with. And that's just because even with Facebook, it's designed to keep you on there all day, like you said. And so if you say, listen, you only get 25 minutes of screen time on this particular app. And that 25 minutes, they're going to be they're going to be swiping and messaging and swiping and messaging. But then in the middle of the night, if they can't sleep, you get a notification. You can say, well, I was very good this week. I can give myself a little extra 10 minutes. And so it's just that whole gamification manipulation thing that really just bugs the shit out of me.
I think the other thing that I see with it is they become reliant upon it. So instead of talking to that guy or talking to that girl that they see at the gas station that they find attractive, they decide not to talk with them and go with the dating app instead.
That's nuts. Do you encourage the one-on-ones?
When you say one-on-one, what do you mean?
Do you encourage hey, I really enjoy the model of successful women who already got it going on, because I'd like to think that's me. So do you encourage you see this man, you see this woman, whatever, go approach him?
Yeah. So my perspective is obviously focused within kind of the woman in this scenario. And so one of the things and one of the reasons why I love dating apps is because it gives women an opportunity to be the chooser and not wait to be chosen, which I think that they've been socially programmed to believe or wait for. And I truly believe that especially nowadays, if you want to get something out of your love life, then you have to create it. You can't just wait for it, right?
Right.
And so that's why I really like dating apps for women specifically. I will say in terms of in real life, dating and interacting and getting to know people, I am definitely encouraging the women that I work with to be much more assertive in engaging and initiating contact. And I'll tell you why. One, we are in a post-Me Too society. And the people that were going to be coming up to you, whether it be at work, whether it be at the coffee shop, whether it be at a restaurant, are not going to be coming up to you as much as they used to because they don't want to be considered a creep or a harasser.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so that's one thing. Two, we are in a quasi post-pandemic world where people are going to be a bit more respectful, of personal space, right? And so again, it's going to actually decrease the probability of someone coming up to you. So if you, again, like I encourage all of my clients and for the listeners out there, if you want something, you're going to have to go out and get it and set the initiative. Am I saying that you're going to approach a man the way that some men approach women? No, right? Because I
Absolutely
think
not.
sometimes women think that when I say, I want you to, initiate this interaction, that's the thing that comes into their mind. There are different ways that you can do it, by giving tons of green lights from across the room, or just starting the conversation, but not necessarily having to drive it. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I like the way you put that, though. I like the whole, you're not going to approach a man the same way he's going to approach you. Women and men are wired differently most of the time. And so the way a man approaches a woman is a little more aggressive. A woman, she approaches a man, I'd like to think it's probably a little more subtle, a little more flirty, and not as very much, can I buy you a drink, as much as, wow, I really like your shirt.
Yeah. What kind of drink is that? Would you recommend it?
Definitely two different energies.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We do encourage women to go out and do the first approach, but it's different than how a man would approach a woman. There's two totally different energies, and you have eons of women are supposed to be submissive being taught, and it's still being taught today, versus men who they're pretty much lost.
Yeah.
We don't have that masculine structure. What is a man? 30 years ago, we could go, this is a man. He goes to work. He brings home the bacon. He does this. He makes the decisions. And women kind of go along for the ride.
You know what always made me laugh about that? It always made me laugh because you'd see the macho man, and he would always come home and drink a martini in this dainty little glass. And I always just found that really funny, because it was such a weird dynamic of how men are supposed to be versus how men look. And 30 years ago, John, men were macho men who couldn't cry. They couldn't do anything. Nowadays, dudes drink like pink drinks and shit. Like it's such an evolution, really, in masculinity. And what we're seeing is that men these days are more manly than the ones who drink the pink drinks than Johnny Bravo 30 years ago, because they can communicate, they can express themselves.
Yeah. We had Dirty Harry and John Wayne. And nowadays you have what?
RuPaul. That's awesome.
I just wanted to follow up on something that you guys said, which was about how women need to be a little bit more assertive. For the listeners out there, because I'm sure that there are women out there that are like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do.
Right.
One thing that I would want to offer to you is just start with random strangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it has to come from the same sex, that's what we'll start with, right?
Yes.
It'll be a baby step. Start with a compliment. Start with saying, hey, how are you? Like those sorts of things, until you can get to a certain comfort level where this doesn't freak you out or make you nervous.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
I've taken clients to the mall, and depending on their anxiety level of interacting with other people, let's start here. And all I want you to do is walk down this corridor and just say hi to 10 people. I don't want you to do anything else. Just smile, wave, say hi, and keep on going. Go down and back. When they get back, I'm like, okay, so how was it? I guess it was okay. Did anybody slap you? Did anybody look at you weird? And they're like, well, no. Okay, now go down the hall. I want you to say hi and ask one question. What time is it? That's all you have to do. And it's just these little tiny baby steps. And
that's right.
I did have one client. It was a guy that I was working with, and he could run a boardroom like there's no tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But you put him in front of a woman, and he would literally freeze. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He was breathing heavy. He was breaking out in sweat, just trying to say hi to another woman. It took me a long time working with him, but we had to do those little baby steps.
Yeah, definitely. One thing also that I wanted to say, because you guys had some really interesting commentary about masculinity and femininity, was that, especially for women, you get to choose exactly what energy you want to be in when it comes to dating and relationships. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of advice out there that's saying, you need to be in your feminine energy. No, you get to choose. If you want to be in your masculine energy, do it, right? But that just means that your dating strategy has to change, right? That means you're going to have to be looking for a certain kind of person to create that polarity of masculine and feminine, right? And for the women that are, let's say, more masculine and that are looking for more masculine men, it's going to be a really tough sell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yes.
I just wanted to finish up and say, like, because that's one of the things that I see, right? as John, as you were pointing out, you have clients that are running boardrooms and then don't know how to engage with the person that they're interested in. It's
Right.
the same on a woman's side as well. We have so many dominant masculine energy women that are looking for masculine men, and then they end up either mothering them or bumping heads because both people are trying to take control of the situation in the relationship.
Right.
One way that
Exactly.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I love that concept and I love that dynamic of, like you said, there's these very powerful, successful women. And John, you said there's very powerful, successful women. And they would probably make dynamic duos together, but they can't even talk to each other. Because number one, like you said, either A, their egos are too big and neither of them can be like, I'm wrong. Or number two, they just don't get there. And it's very interesting because there's people who are on the, let's say, lower tier. You would call them like a beta male, and I don't really think that word exists. But they can talk to these women like there's no problem. This man drives a Toyota Camry, that's his mother's, has no job, lives in his basement, and he will pull the woman who's that high successful woman who she ends up mothering, like you said, because he has no ego. It boggles my mind.
There was a client that I was working with. We took him out and finally found out where the people that he wanted to meet were. Because there's this dynamic where everybody thinks you have to go to a club or you have to go to a bar to meet somebody. It's not true. I just refer to it as your dynamics. Because if you want more of the upper scale, high class type people, well, then you would go to more of a wine tasting.
Right.
That's where they're going to be. So I took him out and there was a group of 6 women and I was like, go over there and talk to them. Now, these were obviously very powerful type women. You can tell by how they sat, how they did their hair, the clothes that they wore. These were your clients. These were the power women. And he went over and started talking to them, asked them a question, and one of them looked at him and goes, I'll give you an answer, but only if you buy us a drink. And he immediately retorted and just goes, I'll buy you a drink, but only because you were the first one to ask. And that opened up the rest of the group, and that was his quote-unquote in with that group of women. The rest of the time, you just saw them, and they were just shooting everybody else down because they didn't live up to their standards.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, the dynamic that you see, and I'm sure you see it, I like what you said, they end up mothering them. Because you see that all the time. You see this very powerful person, whether it's a man or a woman, they find somebody who's not, I'm not going to call them low tier, but somebody who's not as emotionally, financially, or spiritually mature as them, and they see them, and they really do. They nurture this person. And the reason the relationship doesn't work is because it's such an uncomfortable and mildly inappropriate boundary.
Yeah, definitely. Right. I think, women are often socially programmed to give. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's why that happens a lot as well. One of the things that I try to instill in my clients is to try to balance that out and to be a little bit more self-centered as they're approaching their, love game, as I call it, because their natural tendency is to give and potentially give too much, right? Roughly 20% of my clientele are teachers, nurses, therapists, social workers who are always giving in their day life and naturally probably overgive in their relationships. And it is a boundary issue that they need to learn how to manage to create healthy boundaries instead of weak ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
That kind of relates to when I start getting into the actual building of the relationship and how to sustain it. A lot of that deals with desire. And in order to have desire, you have to be selfish. Let's take like a bedroom scene as an example. If all they're doing is worrying about their partner and not themselves, then it's unsatisfying. There's this piece missing. But if you're more concentrated on yourself and expressing yourself to your partner, then you're being a little bit more selfish and you're taking, but at the same time, because you're expressing yourself, your partner is also getting the same amount of pleasure out of the situation.
Yeah, and I want to differentiate between selfish and self-centered, right? Because especially for women out there, right, being self-centered is also knowing who you are, how you feel, and what you need at all times. Mm-hmm. And that is so fundamental in a relationship because your guy is going to want to know that because he wants to please you. And him pleasing you pleases him. So you have to know who you are, how you're feeling at all times, so you can communicate that to him. Even the best guys are going to get it right maybe 2/3 of the time, which means that you're going to have to actually, right? And so that means that you're going to have to communicate exactly how you want to be treated, what's going to make you feel comfortable, what you prefer, what's going to make you happy.
Yes. So now that we've covered that, now somebody's matched on the app, and now it's time to set up the date. So after you match, what comes next? The question that we have is, we've met on an app, now what? What do we do now?
Yeah.
Did you transition into the real world?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that I think was really great during COVID is that the courtship phase slowed down a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas you started going on these phone dates or virtual dates, and then potentially you would go out on a physical date. And I want to encourage that to continue to happen, right? What I have been saying is that I will say men are obviously very focused on speed and are going to try to rush that again as if it were pre-pandemic. And so what I want to encourage the ladies to do is to slow down that courtship phase a little bit. Your right guy is going to do whatever is going to make you feel most comfortable, right? And completely respect your boundaries. And so I usually tell my clients that I want to transition out of the app into another form of communication, because when he's on the app, right, he's talking to you and 30 other women. Right? But yeah, you want to have a one-on-one conversation with someone, right? To be prioritized and to prioritize the other person. So that would be the next step after you quote unquote match.
Yeah.
And then I would have either a phone call or a virtual call, right? It doesn't make sense for you to go out on random dates with people that you don't even really know or have some sort of level of familiarity. On these calls, you might figure out that the vibe is just not there, that you have nothing in common, and it's radically awkward, and you would rather not spend the money, the gas money, or the time to get ready and to go to a date that is not going to fully serve you, right? Yeah. And so that would be something that I would encourage as well. And if after the phone date or the virtual call, Zoom date, and you feel like it is a great date, I usually tell my clients to rate each of their dates from 0 to 10. If it is above a 6, then we should give them another chance. If not, we should let them go and, wish them well. But I do that because I think it's important to check in with yourself and really get an understanding of like, what's a good date and what's not a good date, and what would have made, let's say, a date that you're rating a 7, a 10, right? This is about, for my clients, really getting to know what she needs, what she wants, what she's looking for, right? And that comes from both the head and the heart.
Yes. That's one of the things that we focus on as far as what you want and what you're looking for. We tend to focus on that real early. And it's about identifying the traits that you want in another person, the traits that will complement you. When we talk about traits, we're not talking about looks. We're talking, are they adventurous? Are they intelligent? What type of intelligence are you looking for? Are they comfortable with their own beauty? Are they comfortable with who they are? There's a million different traits that you can choose from, but we ask that they narrow that down to, these are the core traits that we must have, or that I need, in order to even consider a relationship. And during the virtual dates or during the phone calls, you would ask questions that would reveal those type of traits. Actually, that's the next part of this, is what is a good first date question?
Nothing too invasive, nothing too weird, nothing too oddly specific, but you're able to go out on dates. So now you've reached that level of anxiety-free conversation. So you should be able to sort of get a body reading or body language reading on this person. So you can say, what's your favorite car? Now, if they sort of puff their chest out or do something that you find weird, you're able to weed them out in a way that is intelligent, but not stupid.
We had that superpowers episode, which is one of my favorite questions, along with, especially if they like to travel. Instead of asking what country would they go to, I ask, what country would you not visit and why?
Yeah, because that way you know they're racist. If they're like, oh, Canada, it's a shithole, you're like, oh my God, and you just walk out right then and there.
Well, no, it's not a question people get asked. They're always asked, where do you want to go? Where do you want to visit? And why do you want to go there? And it's usually someplace in Europe, or could be South America. It could be any number of countries.
It is usually someplace in Europe.
But nobody asks, where will you not visit? And why won't you go there?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I just wanted to continue, you made a really good point about being nervous on a date. And I think it's really natural for a lot of people to be nervous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially men. I think actually many of them aren't great first daters. And so the phone call and the virtual date actually serve as a first date, so that when you do get into like a real physical date, some of those nerves can subside a bit, right? And you can start to actually really get to know each other and not have the nerves take over. So that's another, I think, benefit having one of those kind of in-between dates, so that it feels like a second date and not a first date, right? One thing that I want to also mention, right, when you were talking about kind of what to talk about, what not to talk about, I think it's important, and I'm going to be talking about for the women out there, to keep it fun and light, right?
Yes.
We want to flirt. We want to have a good time. One of the first questions I ask my ladies when they message me after each and every date that they had is, hey, did you laugh? Did you have a good time? What did you guys joke about? Right? Because if you can't do that, you can't do anything. And the other thing that I've noticed, and one of the reasons why I encourage my clients to do this on the first couple of dates, is because to create any sort of real connection with a man, it requires vulnerability.
Yes.
And in my experience, the quickest way to get to vulnerability is through this fun, light teasing, having a really good time. Because at that point, people are feeling safe with you.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
I would say being vulnerable also is very important for the guys as well, because most men, we're so uptight and we don't want to express anything, especially talking about our feelings or anything else. Guys, there's this unwritten rule. You don't share your feelings.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't share your feelings, well, you're not being vulnerable. So being vulnerable for men as well as women, I'm going to lean a little bit harder on men, because women can be vulnerable around other women, but they don't want to be too vulnerable too early with a guy. And guys, we're just not vulnerable, period. It's not masculine.
Yeah, you guys are a bunch of little sissies. Let's be honest. Like, men are very, very sensitive all the time.
They
and the
are
thing
sensitive.
is, so sensitive. I mean, boys cry. And men will sit and cry and be like,
Not
I
in
don't
public.
understand what I did. Not in public, but they'll keep you up all night crying. Like, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people are fear. Like you said, men are afraid to show their vulnerability. Women are afraid to show their, I want to say, compassion. Because women, if they come off too eager, they're crazy. Men, if they come off too sensitive,
They're sissies.
It's like, why don't you just be yourself, And I think, like you said, those virtual dates are the buffer where you can actually see this person be themselves. You can get a little more intimate because you guys are 200 miles, whatever, how far apart you are. You're 7 internets away from each other. And you can really do that. And then the third date is like, we're comfortable together. Because I think I've noticed that virtual dates last a lot longer than physical dates. Because if you're having a good time, you're sitting on a webcam, 5 hours goes by, next thing you know, you have to go to work.
You should not be on a virtual date for 5 hours, though. You should be on a virtual date for an hour,
For an hour, yeah.
and then do another one the next day if it's so great. I say that because I don't want people out there to pretend like they're at a sleepover and tell all your secrets of your entire life, and then literally a week goes by and you guys have nothing to talk about, and it just flames out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once I get somebody past those initial virtual dates, either on the phone or on a Zoom call or whatever they're using to communicate with, I want them to actually set up or think about the actual physical date. Now, I used to lean real heavy on the afternoon coffee type date. I've broken away from that because it's become way too common. So I kind of moved it back a little bit, more like 3:30, 4 o'clock-ish. That way, if it's going well, it can actually turn into a more formalized type date that people would think of. but I don't want them to actually do the whole dinner and movie thing. Actually, I'm anti-dinner and movie. What I recommend is something really fun. And one of the things I found that is really successful for our clients is a photo scavenger hunt. So you come up with a list of things around the city to take pictures of. So you can actually go explore the city, because I live in a really small area and there's not a whole lot to do here. But if you explore the downtown area, there's a lot of little places that you can go that people who have lived here their entire life didn't even know existed. And as the date progresses, when you start looking at the photos that they took during the date, it's like, here's the photo of the street sign, here's the photo of the statue. Next photo is their date is posing in front of it, doing some kind of goofy face or goofy pose. And you can see the progression as they're going through, just how goofy they both are. And the next thing you know, both of them are in the shot because they set their phone up or their camera on a timer. And they have so much fun doing that.
I think that's a great idea.
It is. It's magical. I'm not a walk around person, but it's the same thing. It's the creating a memory, creating something that can last. So even if you don't leave with your perfect match, you do leave having a good time. It's not a waste of time. I've had dates where I'm like, okay, we both know this isn't going anywhere, but we're having a good time. There's no reason we should leave. We're just not compatible in a dating sort of way. But we'll go bowling together. I think bowling's an excellent first date too, actually.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I think it is one of the best. Unless you're dating someone who isn't competitive. It's terrible.
So once we have the first date questions out of the way, the next one is, how can you psych yourself up for the date? Kind of get over the nervousness and going through your entire wardrobe, trying on every outfit that you have, and
cleaning your car out.
Yeah. Matt, that's a whole different topic right there.
Getting ready for a first date is crazy.
But how do you recommend that your clients actually kind of psych themselves up and get ready for that actual first physical date?
I think that, again, having those buffer dates are really important. I also think, I tell all of my clients that they should be dating multiple people at the same time. I call it Olympic dating. They need to have a gold medalist, a silver medalist, and a bronze medalist. And so what that means is that you get to not put a lot of pressure on one single date. It doesn't really matter in the scheme of all things, right? It's like diversify your portfolio, right? I think a lot of women are hesitant to do this because they've been programmed to believe that that's not what women should do, right? And that they should be focused on one man, when for centuries men have been dating multiple people at the same time, right? And so this is about dating in 2021 and learning and knowing, right? I think of love and dating and relationships both qualitatively and quantitatively. I was a stats major as an undergrad. 9 out of the 10 dates that you go on are not going to be the one. Right. But you got to go on 10 to find the one. This is the law of averages, of course. And if you tell me that you're going on a date, once every 6 months or so, then yeah, it's going to take you a good 5 years to find someone probably.
Yes.
Right. So dating multiple people also helps with that as well. It helps to protect your heart and to put less pressure on yourself and these individual dates that in the scheme of all things don't matter as much.
Right. If you listen to our past podcasts, you'll find out that, you'll find I'm a casual dater. I will go out with 3 to 4 women at the same time. I pretty much cut it off at 4 because 5 is too many to juggle. And Ashley is more of the monogamous.
Absolutely not.
One person at a time.
Hyper focus.
Yes.
That's it.
How does that work for you?
It works until it doesn't. Just kind of I think it's a comfortability thing. I think I'm very much wired for that. I enjoy one person. If I have to spread my attention, nobody's going to get anything. It's kind of like when I was in high school and I had to take 7 classes. I put 0 effort into 7 classes. When I went to adult education sign language class, I gave it my all and I came out learning sign language. I'm very bad at juggling. So I just throw one ball up in the air and catch it. That way, if I drop it, I drop it.
But I've found that casually dating and going out with multiple women at the same time, it may not work out with everybody, but I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know the traits that they need to have in order for us to even consider having a relationship. And if they don't have those 4 core traits, it's really not going to work. Now, if
I
they
think
have,
it's also important. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I have a total of 15 traits. Now, 4 of them are core. They have to have at least those 4 to consider any kind of relationship. And then I have about 5 that are negotiables, where they don't have to have the exact definition of what I'm looking for, but if they have some semblance of it, those are the give and takes. And then I have the last few remaining. That's kind of like the sprinkles on top of the icing. And they're nice to have, they're great to have, but if you don't have them, it's no big deal.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I was just going to say really quickly for the women out there that are listening, right? I think it's important to be able to know what you want and what you don't want. And dating multiple people will give you that sense to compare and contrast and say, well, Joe does this, but, Tom does this, and I actually really like this. It helps you to put specific weights on the things that you think you want, or also the things that you actually need that you may not have known that you needed, based on the comparing and contrasting, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, casual dating works for people. It just doesn't work for me. If you're a casual dater, I commend you. But I just want people to know that you're not alone if you're not. It's perfectly normal to do either. But don't feel discouraged if you're like, I don't want to do this.
I just find that with casual dating, when you have to call it off, or you have to tell the person this isn't going to work, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It becomes much easier. Yeah. And there are certain ways to let the other person know. Like, I can tell them this really isn't going to work, where they're on the other end of the spectrum thinking this is the end all be all and they're planning the wedding. No, there's just certain traits that you don't have. You're not a bad person. It's just, I'm a very adventurous type person and you're very much more stay at home.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. And usually, I would say 99% of the time, they're able to accept that. And there's no hard feelings between us. And we're actually able to remain friends afterwards. I have a lot of exes that I'm still very close friends with. Matter of fact, I'm talking with one. She was asking me about her new boyfriend right before the podcast. She was asking for some advice.
That's funny. Can you talk more, John, can you talk more about what these core traits are and how to figure them out? Because I feel like I think about these in a similar way and we might have different language around this.
Okay. Yeah, the core traits for myself, I'll use adventure. It's one of those that is very easy to define because people understand it really well. But let's say my definition of adventure is extreme sports. I like skydiving, racing motorcycles, whitewater rafting, spelunking, which is cave diving, rock climbing, anything that gets the adrenaline pumping. That's my definition of adventure. Now, the girl that I'm currently talking with, her idea of adventure is, let's go hop in the car and go on a road trip.
Let's just drive.
Yeah, let's just go somewhere. Let's get lost on purpose. That's her idea of adventure. Well, our definitions aren't exactly the same. It's something that we can meet on.
Right.
I'm not going to get her up in a plane and she's not going to jump out of it. It's not going to happen. But we can go on a roller coaster. She's perfectly happy with roller coasters. And that's a type of adventure for me. Another one is intelligence. I really hate it when I meet a woman and she's extremely smart. There's one girl that I was going out with. She was an ASE certified mechanic, but she was coming to me asking me how to change spark plugs. She was dumbing herself down, so I felt more like a man and more of a leader. Drove me nuts. When I found out she was an actual mechanic and knew everything about an engine, I got a little bit pissed off because she was dumbing down her knowledge instead of being able to teach me about how a catalytic converter works.
It's funny. We wasted all this time with spark plugs and we could have built an engine. It's so funny.
Yeah, so those are 2 of the traits that I look for. I want somebody who's intelligent, who's not going to dumb themselves down. They're unapologetic about their knowledge and about their education and about where they came from.
And how do you differentiate between the regular traits and the core traits?
The core traits, it really comes from my past history of dating lots of different women. And I'm able to look at what didn't work. I'm very analytical. You can ask Ashley. One of my dates that I was talking about in our last episode.
So funny.
Our date was to a big box home improvement store, and we designed the entire house.
Oh my goodness.
She was
Hilarious.
like, what are we doing here? I was like, we're going to have a lot of fun. So if you could have your dream house, how would you design the kitchen? And we went around, we picked out cabinets and we picked out the countertops. We picked out all the appliances, and then we moved over to the flooring. We picked out the tile and the carpet and the hardwood, and we designed the bathroom. She wants one of those great big whirlpool type tubs. We walked out there. We had the color schemes and everything for this dream house that if we were married, this is what we would have. And she still talks about that date today. She shares it with all of her friends. It's just that imagination. It's being able to be a kid and drop being an adult for just a little bit of time.
So cool.
So having that childlike mentality is another one of those traits that I look for, because I like to have lots of fun. Spur of the moment. We'd be walking through a parking lot and all of a sudden I'm just doing the jig going up to the front door, and I want her to join in with me. Can she do that? Just my history of dates and my history with going out with different people, the best relationships I had, these are the traits that the women had that I was going out with. And those are my 4 core traits. And I don't share exactly what it is, because I do have a couple of women that I'm going out with. They do listen to the podcast, and I don't want them faking.
That's crazy. I don't know how they do that. Like,
yeah, I don't want them.
I wouldn't.
Well, they already know. I don't want them faking those core traits, because I will eventually
That's why I'm
find
saying
out.
I wouldn't. Like, if I was dating someone who did a dating and relationship podcast, I wouldn't want to hear anything they had to say surrounding the idea, because even if you don't mean to, sometimes if you really like a person and it can be completely unintentional, you start to try and bond more with them. And so I couldn't imagine them listening to it. And it can be unintentional.
Have you ever gone out with somebody and you mentioned that you like a certain movie or a certain type of music?
You have no idea.
And all of a sudden they like it too. And then you find out years later or months later, they can't stand it. They think it's the most stupid thing they've ever seen or heard.
Yeah,
but
this happens a lot.
Yeah.
And it's very uncomfortable for me, at least, because granted, yes, I date one person at a time, but I've dated a decent amount of people. And I've seen that happen where it's like, I like to read and I like to watch movies a lot. And so I'll talk about my favorite movie or whatever. Next thing you know, this person is...
They're an expert on it.
Fully enthralled. Yes. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You psychopath. Like, this is single white female shit. I'm backing out. Because you deserve your own personality. As much as I appreciate, and my ego is super flattered by you being mildly obsessed with something I'm obsessed with. If it's not organic, I don't want it. Like, my number one trait is you have to be a team player. And being a team player means you play different positions at different times. So sometimes you say, hey, let's turn the fucking TV off. Not, okay, Ashley, we'll sit down for 20 hours because that's what you want to do. You're going to say, hey, we need to go outside and see sunlight.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I was asking about the core traits is because as you were mentioning that, John, and talking about having questions around some of those traits, right? That not just you embody, but that you're looking for, I think is an important part of the dating process.
Yes.
And one of the things that I how I talk to my clients about this is about the wants and the needs, right? And I think the wants are kind of the general checklist that you had, and maybe some of the past relationship experience where you're like, oh, my ex did this that I really like. Like, those are the wants. But I think when we kind of peel the onion a little bit more, right? And really look to understand what we actually need, what are the things that are going to actually fulfill you at a deeper level for a long period of time. The question that I ask my clients is, what were those 3 to 5 things that you were yearning for in your parental relationships that you didn't receive?
Right.
Exactly. People love how they were loved.
Because, you can say, this is how you develop your love languages, but it gives you a clear understanding of actually what you're deeply looking for versus what you just want, right?
Right.
There's a difference between someone who makes you laugh and someone who gives you the attention that you need, right? Or cherishes you, or is dependable and reliable, or is, respecting your boundaries, or supporting your talents. So I want to encourage listeners out there to just ask themselves what those things are for themselves so that they can have maybe a little bit more clarity around what they're truly looking for.
Right.
And to ask questions accordingly.
The things that I need, those would be the core traits. The things that I want, and I have to kind of split between want and desire because there's a difference there. So the things that I desire, those are the negotiables. Now, the things that I want, but they aren't really necessary, those would be the last few traits that I'm looking for that are the sprinkles and the decorations on top of the cake. They're nice to have, but if they don't have them, it's not going to lead me to, is there somebody else better down the road? Because I go through these phases, and I've talked about this on a previous episode, where I look at where I'm at within the dating spectrum with a person. First, they have to get my attention. Now, once they get my attention, there has to be some kind of attraction. And this, we're talking seconds or milliseconds. You look at somebody and go, oh, wow, they're attractive. I want to know them. Then I have this curiosity phase that I go through, and I just want to get to know the person a little bit better. And once I get past curiosity, that's when you enter that honeymoon phase, and that's infatuation. That's where I'm looking down the road, seeing the relationship taking place. For lack of better terms, you start to daydream about them. You're carrying on conversations with the air in the passenger seat of the car, that kind of thing. And then I move into commitment. And that's where I make up my mind, okay, time to start deleting the apps and start breaking it off with everybody else because I want to give you my full attention. You have me if you want me. So those are the phases that I go over with different clients so that they're not jumping from attraction to, will you marry me in 5 seconds? Because that's a trap that I find some clients get into. They haven't dated in a while. They finally are talking to somebody and they're ready to start buying a house and planning how many kids they're going to have.
Yeah, and I
That's
think
why you got to do the work first.
Depending on the gender, right? I think women are very much looking toward the future, like on date 1 or 2. Whereas men are not even really thinking about this until date 6, 7, or 8. So part of the work that I'm doing is like slowing them down and making sure that we're staying present while we're dating.
Right.
Yeah, we've kind of been ingrained as women to know what you want and sort of go into this and you're looking for a mate. Men are looking for a date. Most women are looking for a mate. And it's very weird because if a woman, most of the time, if you're raised in a traditional household as a woman, you're taught to be courted and then you're kind of taught to be submissive towards this man. And then when he's ready to make you his wife, you're the belle of the ball. But you have to go in with the intentions of marrying this man. He doesn't have to do the same thing with you. Thankfully, we have moved past that bullshit. And now women are able to go in and we have great coaches like you, great coaches like John, who will teach women. You don't have to do that anymore. You can do the same thing he's doing. And you guys can be on the same level, the same understanding, and have a great time and both leave with reasonable expectations.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think women you said that they know what they want. I think that they have been taught to want to be married, but not know exactly what they want within that marriage. Right?
Yeah,
and
no,
so
all
part of, I think, the work that we're doing is actually helping these individuals really know so that they can find that person that's going to fulfill what they're looking for.
Yeah. I've worked with couples. That's another thing that we do where they're just trying to figure out how to put the spark back into their relationship. But when you start talking with them and then you separate them and you start talking to them one-on-one, you find out that they have this more ambiguous relationship. There's no desire there. They're more like roommates sharing the same bed at night. And then you really start getting into it and you find out we jumped into this way too soon. We moved in with each other 2 months after we met each other because it kind of made sense, but there was no rhyme or reason behind it. They didn't exactly know what they were looking for, but this person fit the bill at the moment.
Right. You met him in college. When you meet someone in college, or, you're like you were in the military and you're going off to war and you want to marry your sweetheart, or, you're kind of taught that you need to go this particular way in life. And then once you do that, you're 30 years old or 35 years old, you wake up and you look at this person and you say, oh my God, we both made a mistake because we did not define every single thing we needed. Right. And we thought this was the way to go, and we just kind of accepted something. And now people are able to define what they want and say, look, this isn't working. It may have worked the first 6 dates. We had a great time, but it's not really going the way I want it to. Or, I'm not really enjoying this anymore. And people are allowed to stop. Before, people weren't even allowed to get divorces, or if they got pregnant, they had to get married. Now it's like, we're going to pump this brakes now, because the level of expectation by society has basically been eliminated, which is what kept people in these shitty relationships to begin with.
There's a lot of societal turns that are currently taking place, and a lot of people are just lost. What is a relationship? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? And how long should we go out? That's another popular question that we keep getting is, how long should I wait before I say I love you? Well, are you in the commitment phase, or are you in the infatuation phase? Where are you? Because if you're in infatuation, you're really not in love yet. It feels like it, but you're not quite there.
You guys just had sex once. Yeah, you're not in love. You're in lust completely, and that's what happens. And that's a real thing that happens in most relationships. People have that oxytocin release, and all of a sudden you're in love. They can do no wrong. And then you're like, I love you. And then 2-3 months later, you're like, what the fuck did I get myself into? Because you're not allowing your relationship to butt into something. You're just feeling your feelings instead of realizing that there are chemicals involved.
There you go, people. Anwar White from Get Your Guy Coaching Podcast. And Anwar, again, he works as a dating coach for smart and successful women. And you can find him at getyourguycoaching.com. We want to really thank you, Anwar, for coming on the show and sharing how you coach and giving so much advice to the single women out there and how they can go ahead and start stepping forward and taking more charge of their dating life.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Oh, not a problem. Again, if we don't work out for you, if we're not exactly working for you, check out Anwar, because he is an amazing coach. He's been doing this for years, and he does know what he is doing. So he is an option if our podcast or what we teach doesn't work for you. Possibly Anwar can explain it differently, as you discovered earlier.
That's right, John. Getting a dating coach is just like dating.
Yes. What we were talking about earlier, where I explain things one way and Anwar explains it a different way. One of those two ways might resonate with you. So again, Anwar, we thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really enjoyed you having you.
Enjoy your day, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Guys, remember, look Kim up. Do you want to one more time repeat everything for everyone?
Yes. So it's Get Your Guy Coaching Podcast and getyourguycoaching.com.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Oh, not a problem. And with that, we will talk to you on the next one.
That's all for this episode of the Girls Ask Guys show, where all of us learn to master this thing called life together. For more answers to your questions on life and love, be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And head to girlsaskguyshow.com to submit your questions for a future episode or apply to be a guest on the show. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time, right here on the Girls Ask Guys show.